Peptides, what are they? And why do we need to have them on our radar?
So basically remember that, peptides are small, short chains of amino acids. So, less than 50 amino acids is a peptide, more than 50 is a protein. So they just kind of fall into that same protein realm. And I sort of look at peptide replacement for longevity the same way I look at hormone replacement. Replace what you're losing. So the reason we need hormones is because when we were young, we had them. When we're old, we don't. The same thing's true about peptides. When we're young, we have certain peptides. So there are two different types of peptides. There's manufactured peptides that we don't make that have benefits, right? We have all sorts of benefits from peptides. And there's peptides that we make, like insulin. Two of the most important come from the thymus gland. So when we're babies, we have this giant gland in our chest called the thymus gland. And we know that thymus gland starts to shrink at puberty. By the time you're my age, it's not even existent anymore. So it's not making two of our most important peptides, which are thymosin alpha-1. Thymosin alpha-1 is a peptide that's super important for immune function. So our immune function declines as we age. If I replace thymosin alpha-1, I can keep at the same level I was when I was young. I should have a good, healthy, robust immune system. When we're at puberty, our immune systems are very robust. They start declining after that. So basically, replace what you're losing. Replace TA1 and the other thymic peptides, thymosin beta-4, which is something that helps with tissue repair and regeneration. So what I like to do is 4 times a year, I put people on a course of thymic peptides for like 6 weeks, 3 times a week, a little TA1, TB4. I'm replacing what's lost. So I look at peptides, replace what's lost. The other peptide that gets lost is BPC, stands for body protective compound. It comes from the gut. So the gut makes BPC in response to injury. When we're little, we make tons. So you're little and you hurt yourself, it's better in a week. You're old and you hurt yourself and it's months and months and months. So if you could just get more BPC on board, you're going to heal faster. So 4 times a year, I do a combination of BPC, thymosin alpha-1, and thymosin beta-4, replacing what I've lost. So I keep those levels up to where they were, just like you might with estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, right? Yep. What else do we lose as we age? Growth hormone. So growth hormone starts to decline.
But we can't just take growth hormone itself.
Taking growth hormone is very difficult. There's when you give exogenous growth hormone, you're not really, it's not natural the way our body makes it. So what you want to do is we use what are called growth hormone secretagogues, which basically tell our own pituitary to just make and release a little bit more. So we can get some nice little surge of growth hormone at night when we're sleeping, which is the most important time. That's when we repair. When we're young and regenerating, we got lots of growth hormone. When we're old, we don't have it anymore.
So this is like ipamorelin and
so CJC, ipamorelin, or tesamorelin, ipamorelin. So that combination, and what I have people do with that is if they can afford it, stay on it continuously 5 out of 7 days a week. You can cycle that too, but really that's one of those ones that we just like your hormones, estrogen, progesterone, we want to keep it at a level that was where our baseline levels in our 20s, basically. Okay.
Yep. And so, you got mitochondrial peptides.
The last piece, would be 4 times a year. I'm going to give back the mitochondrial peptide. So as I age, I lose mitochondria. The way mitochondria tell me I need more mitochondria is probably by producing a peptide, several peptides, but one that we can have access to is called MOT-SC. MOT-SC is a peptide made by the mitochondria. So if my mitochondria is stressed, they make MOT-SC. That tells my nucleus to make more mitochondria.
Gotcha.
If I don't have very many mitochondria left, I make less MOT-SC. Wow. So I don't get new mitochondria. So as I get old, I can't make new mitochondria. Remember, mitochondria are making ATP. That's your energy.
That's our energy level, guys.
Our energy.
When you're fatigued.
So think about the tissues that need ATP the most: your brain, your heart, your muscle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got think about 4 times a year replace that.
You know? So for things like long COVID, where your mitochondria are being hammered,
mitochondria get hammered by viral illnesses like COVID. Hammered, right? Or if you overtrain, and that's really hard to recover, especially if you're older.
Yep.
So
these are all the things that show, like, we get older and then we start not being able to exercise like we used to. And this is why. And so you can give this stuff back.
Right. You can give back what we're losing. And that's exactly right. When people are like, oh, why do I need this stuff? It's because you made it when you were young and you don't now. Yeah. Right. So, there's no way that your body's all of a sudden going to just stay at those levels. It's just not going to. Yeah. So we decline and we age and we don't recover.
What about LL37? That's another.
So LL37 is an antiviral peptide. So I'm not going to put that into my longevity realm. That one's going to be one you're going to pull in more often if somebody is sick. I'm trying to treat a virus, right?
So long COVID
If I look at the
yeah.
last peptide that I would say put into your longevity piece, it's Epi Talon, which is made. So one of the other things that goes away as we age is our pineal gland. So our pineal gland senses light, dark. It sets our circadian rhythm. That's why older people get all screwed up in their circadian rhythms, right? So the pineal gland calcifies as we age. And I was listening to a talk by a guy on pineal gland. He's like, there's just nothing you can do about it. Well, there is. You can give back what the pineal gland makes. So Epi Talon is pineal peptide. It's called a bioregulator peptide. So it actually changes our DNA. So twice a year, you can do a course of like 5-10 milligrams 3 times a week. You do that for about 10 days, twice a year, and you're going to keep the pineal function going. I'm going to get a nice circadian balance going. So again, I replaced my mitochondrial stuff, replaced my growth hormone, I replaced my repair peptides, the thymic peptides and BPC, and replaced my pineal peptides. So now I've kept things where they were when I was young, right? So you cycle those again twice a year for the Epi Talon, 4 times a year for Mitochondria, and now I'm going to stay hopefully at those levels where I can repair and recover and I don't get hit. When I do get hit by something like COVID or you fall and break your hip, then you got to maybe add more into the mix. But those are the baselines that I'm going to do all the time to keep my body at a stable level.
And there's some that are, bioregulator, the stuff coming out of Professor Cavinson's labs that I've been studying. You went to the conference and everything,
right?
And some of these are sort of oral, and these are easier for us to get. And so I am interested in these because some of the other ones that we've mentioned are bloody difficult to get if they don't have you as their personal physician, and they're not,
So like thymolin, which is an oral thymic peptide. Now, the hardest thing to me about the bioregulators is there's not a lot of data yet on them.
Yeah.
Only data is out of Cavinson's lab.
Yeah.
The thing about bioregulators is basically they're short chains of amino acids. The problem with peptides is most of them, when you take them orally, they get broken down. But these are such small, they're 2-3 amino acids that that they typically don't get broken down the same way. Then they can insert themselves in the DNA and repair things. I think there probably is value to them. I wish that we had more science besides Dr. Cavinson's research out of them. So we have just the Russian research, but I do think they have benefits, and that is a nice way because you can do the same thing. If you look at the bioregulators, you replace the thymic peptides, you replace the pineal peptides, you replace so Epi Talon and thymolin, and you can use those, cycling them through. And you never want to be on more than 4 bioregulators at a time. So you do like a 6-week course, about 4 of them, and then you might switch to a different one. But you're trying to look at them as, okay, this is what I'm going to use to keep this part of my body the same way it was. So I do think there's value to them. I would love to see a little more data.
Yeah, especially just because they're easier to get because they come in a pill form rather than a sub-Q.
Pill form orally, you can buy them online. I think certainly they're better than at this point. They certainly are not bad for you. Yeah, and probably are good.
And the BPC, things like BPC, which we've been trying to get this week for Mum's healing of her gut, the oral, because we've got the BPC 157 injectables, but we're dealing with an intestinal digestive thing. So
so BPC
for things
like
that.
For the gut works much better orally. For other injuries, works better subcutaneously.
Yep.
So if I'm using it for longevity purpose, I usually do it subcutaneously. But for gut repair, bar none, you just want to do twice a day orally.
So we've got some of that en route. Any of the other peptides? Semiglutide, I know it's probably not on the high list, but a very, very interesting one, also quite expensive one, but very powerful for people who really
so I am going to say that does fall into my, that is one of my on my list of longevity peptides, because when you look at what the GLP-1, so semaglutide is what's called a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist. They're used for diabetes and now for weight loss. But if you look at what they do for brain, they're neuroprotective. For kidney, they're renal protective. They're gut protective. They actually help build muscle. I know Peter Tia just did a big post about that the GLP-1 agonists are bad because you lose muscle. You don't. They actually help you build muscle unless you don't take enough protein in. What happens is the GLP-1 agonists reduce your appetite so much that you just don't eat enough. And so you get protein deficient. But if you can keep people's protein intake up, you'll actually preferentially lose fat and build muscle. So we kind of talked about them years ago as being something that we should sort of think about and you don't even need a super high dose, just a small dose regularly for its protective effects on every single organ system. Every organ system.
0.1,
like 0.1 milligram. Like you don't need a lot.
Yeah. They do
the weight
sort of
loss dose is like
increasing.
2.5 milligrams, but you need like really like, honestly, like 0.1 milligram just for its protective effects. And then it doesn't end up being that costly to do.
Yeah. Okay. That's something to put on people's radar, because there are a lot of people just absolutely struggling with weight loss. And of course,
For
we
weight
need
loss,
to go to the diet.
it's incredible. This bar none has been a game changer in my practice for weight loss.
Yeah,
honestly,
I've seen some pretty amazing
incredible.
things. Yeah, it's just so difficult to access here. So if people are wanting to talk about these peptides and really need the sort of next level in peptide support, they can can come through me, and I'll get you under Dr. Yurth here. So because they aren't cheap generally, and there are some issues getting them in, but we have managed to. And if you're in the States, then you need to go to the Boulder Longevity Institute and get your peptides sorted, because that's the easiest way.
Yeah, you do want a good source for the peptides. You and I've been around this because it is hard in Australia and New Zealand to get them. So finding good sources as much as you can.
Yeah, I'm still working on that one.
Yeah.